In my remarks, and Mr. Speaker, let me say how much I appreciate thank you, Mr. Speaker. Appreciate the hard work and the very thoughtful remarks by my very good friend, Mr. Brown and Mr. Davis and Mr. Schiff have all outlined some of the very great challenges that have been faced with this amazing Spirit and Opportunity program. I, like my friend Mr. Schiff, was 5 years ago there when this program began, and I will never forget when Dr. Charles Elachi, the director of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, about whom Mr. Schiff was just speaking, leaned to me and said, "David, you know, I know this is scheduled to have a lifespan of 90 days, 3 months." But he said, I suspect that it might just go a little longer than that. And here we are today, marking the 5th anniversary of Spirit and Opportunity, named by 2 young students who came together. They had a contest to name them, and these very bright, thoughtful kids came forward and said they wanted to name Spirit and Opportunity. And they have gone through an amazing 5 years. As Mr. Brown said so well, windstorms and all kinds of cold and great adversity, and yet they're still chugging along, providing very important information back to us. And Mr. Schiff talked about the days ahead. They're now headed, Opportunity is headed to that new massive crater Endeavour. And so we're going to continue to get more and more interesting information. So these 3 gentlemen, Mr. Speaker, have just talked about what Spirit and Opportunity have gone through. But I'd like to take a moment to look at the context around which this whole issue is being considered. And that is the devastating economic times that we are facing right here in the United States of America. Obviously, first and foremost on our minds is getting our economy back on track, ensuring that people who are suffering greatly with foreclosures and job losses, and even worse in some instances, are able to have those needs addressed. And many of us have been working to try and put into place a strong, bold, dynamic, robust economic growth program that, interestingly enough, is modeled after the program that was put into place by the man who called for us to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade of the 1960s, and that, of course, was John F. Kennedy, and we're continuing to try and work for those kinds of growth policies. Now, the reason I say that, Mr. Speaker, is that there's so many who would argue that as we look at the sort of amorphous space program out there, why in the world are we investing resources on that when we have so many pressing challenges right here at home? And there are a couple of points that I think need to be made. First, when we were celebrating the landing of another great JPL program, the Phoenix, one of the great scientists got up and talked about the fact that throughout world history, every single developed nation has, in fact, regardless of what challenges they faced, always looked at the imponderable. They have always made risk to pursue the unknown. And I'm reminded, of course, that it was the great Queen Isabella who sold her jewels so that Christopher Columbus might have the opportunity to discover America. And so risk-taking is something, even during adverse times, we need to continue to pursue, and we can't ignore that, because we are the United States of America, the greatest nation the world has ever known, and that's why this is very important. Second, we need to also realize, Mr. Speaker, that there are very important gains that we as a society and as a world are able to glean from this very important work. Whether it's in medical imaging, and I know Dr. Brown understands that, whether it's in dealing with environmental protection, whether it's dealing with cellular technology, global positioning systems, there are a wide range of things that have emanated from programs like Spirit and Opportunity that have dramatically improved the standard of living and quality of life for people here in the United States and around the world. And so it's in that context that I join in celebrating the work of our friends at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and Caltech, and all involved in this very important NASA research and effort that is going on. And I thank both my friends for their hard work in their committee, and for coming forward and allowing us to consider, Mr. Schiff and me, to consider this resolution. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back.